And I'll start off with this. You've already talked about it. You've been in the recruitment industry for over 20 years, working with agencies for over 20 years, rather. Certainly on strategy and planning side of that. Um, what makes a good strategy from your perspective? But more importantly, how can an agency owner really ensure that that strategy gets probably executed properly when, as you said, we may not be their wheelhouse straight from the off?
Yeah, it's look, this is a common issue for many recruitment businesses. Why? Because many recruitment businesses start up because you've got bloody good recruiters who are really frustrated and thinking, do you know what?
Yeah,
Screw you. I'm going to go and do this for myself. And
yeah,
actually, yeah, get rid of all my frustrations and go and do my thing. And they're brilliant recruiters, but quite often really brilliant recruiters aren't necessarily great business people because they've just never had that experience. So point one to your question there. So what makes a good strategy? I'm going to use a sporting analogy here I use a lot, and it's not to do with football. It's to do
yeah.
with mountaineering and to do with climbing.
Okay.
So to successfully scale any serious mountain, whether it's K2, Everest, whatever, you need to know where the summit is.
Right.
So you need to know where you want to end up. But importantly, also, you need to know how to get back down. Because
Right.
what a lot of people don't understand is more people die coming down the mountain
At
than going
Everest.
up it. It's about 90% of people, death is on the way down, not on the way up.
Wow.
But anyway, but importantly, you never go, so you know where the summit is. So you've got your destination clear, right? That's where we would need to be. But the
Yeah.
important thing is, Keith, it's about how are we going to get there? We're not going to go straight up in a straight line because that's certain death and destruction. What we need to do is we need to understand where we start from and then where our first milestone is, where we need to get to, camp one. What do
Yeah.
we need to get there? Okay, right.
Yeah.
Once we're there, what do we then need to get us to the next place? But importantly, between us going from point A to point B, and now we need to get to point C, what's changed in that
Right.
interim? Is it still safe to do that route? Do we have all the right equipment
Yeah.
around us? Do we have the people in place, or is somebody really important to us, our lead Sherpa, just bust his leg, or something like that? So
Yeah.
it's about having a plot. So it's not just the destination, but it's having a roadmap. You need sat nav for your business, and that's really what strategy should give you. It gives you a
Right.
destination, but importantly, it gives you a clarity of the roadmap. Not for the 3 or 5 year strategy, but for the next
Yeah.
12 months. What are the key critical things we need to do to get there? But we need to know what success looks like as well. That's
Yeah.
so important, because I think one of the learnings I've been through over the years is how easy recruitment professionals, and I count myself as one of those, so I'm not deriding people, I'm with you on this, we can
Yeah.
easily get distracted about the next exciting thing, the shiny thing over there. And it's
Yeah.
so important you keep your eye on the prize and don't
Yeah.
get distracted. And if it's not in the plan, if it's not in the strategy, maybe the plan and strategy need to change, or let's not get distracted. Let's do what we're going to do.
I agree, Miles. I'd also say that let's say one of the goals is to climb Everest in that analogy, and one of the goals may be to have a successful recruitment business. I think you also got to realize that don't start looking at and then I'll get 5 agencies, and then I'll get 10, and then I'll go to America, and then I'll conquer the world. It's like, yeah, you can have them dreams, and there's nothing wrong with having your 3, 4, 5 year goals that people seem to have in their heads. But I think you're absolutely right. If you can anchor in on what's this next 12 months going to look like and have that clear, and then, as you say, you can strategize all the way around to that 12 months, because your 3 year goals are immaterial if you don't hit that first 12 months
Yeah.
anyway. So I
Yeah.
think that some people do that. And just on the second part of that question, then, is there tactics that you embrace and you've used that will then ensure that the owner can do that properly?
Look, when we engage a new recruitment consultant, they will have a plan. What's your 30, 60, 90-day plan? Where
Yeah.
are you going to be in 6 months? What targets, what smart objectives are you
Yes.
setting yourself, or are we going to agree? What does your journey look like? But what frustrates me is as recruitment leaders and managers, we're really good at doing that with our new hires, our new consultants, and managing them. But we need to manage our business in the same way. So
Yeah.
we need a similar approach. When I work with clients, or when we at North Star work with clients, it's not just a case of here's the 12-month plan, but that plan's broken down into 90-day sprints, so 4 quarters. What are the
Right.
key critical things we need to do in this quarter to get us to a point to allow us to then do the next part of the journey? Because the danger is, if you do too many things too quickly, you fail.
Yes.
or you don't do things as well as you might do, which can lead to sort of failure or disappointment, if not
Yes.
absolute failure. But importantly, again, it's about just having that clarity of purpose and understanding what's important now, what's urgent now, what needs dealing with. And I think being accountable is a challenge. And I think that's where you get a lot of agency owners when they've gone through a bit of growth and it sort of bumbles along a bit and sort of bounces forward, bounces back, frustrations start to build. Quite often the penny drops and it's thinking, I need somebody else to be with me and to be that external. And I think that's why, you know, if you get the right advisor, and I'm not selling me or North Star here, but you get the right person, external set of eyes with you, call them a non-exec, call them advisor, call you what you will. They will hold you account. If they're doing their job, they'll hold you accountable. They'll challenge you. They'll push you. They'll prod you. They'll poke you. And I think sometimes as an agency owner, you know, you may be missing something if you don't have that. You know, going back to sport, Keith, the very best athletes, the very best sports professionals have people around them, people to help them with their mind, people to help them with their strength and conditioning, people to help them overcome hurdles and objections, people to make them more accurate in their shooting or their passing or whatever it is.
Yes.
You know, they spend 99% of their time training to be brilliant on the pitch. We're on the pitch 99.9% of the time, if not 100% of the time. And we don't invest enough in ourselves. No. We don't have great coaches around us to make us the best version of ourselves. And that's why we're doing what we're doing today, isn't it? Because we're sharing knowledge. We want people just to stand up and be better.
Well, exactly that. And that leads me quite nicely into, I'm going to mix questions up a bit. On the conversation, I've just put different things in, but that I think the challenges as well. I think I've not yet met a business owner. This is not just recruitment, but in business alone, who has said it all went perfect. And yeah, I did say I was going to earn $1 million in the first year, and I surpassed that, and I'm retired now. That I've never heard that story. I've heard great stories. I've heard remarkable growth stories. I've heard all sorts. But then it's the challenges and you say that strategy has got to be almost like a liquid document or a semi-liquid document to react. We were talking in the Hive about last year. 2022 was a good bounce back year. Everyone thought, wow, this is recruitment like 90s and it's going to be wonderful. And anyone who joined in that period thought that's what recruitment was. Well, the harsh reality was 2023 hit, and then that's more like a regular, probably a tougher recruitment market, but more like a regular recruitment market. But I guess you can learn from those things. So what are the kind of lessons that people should be learning from challenging times? Because I don't think we're out of the woods yet, from my experience and references of the Power Hive, at least.
No, look, it's all, everything you're saying there really sort of resonates. You know, the market was very good for a decent chunk of time, wasn't it? There was a good 2 years pre-2023 where it was exceptional. And dare I say, maybe we all got a little bit lazy, a little bit fat, a little bit put on a bit of weight around the middle, got a little bit chubby. We were doing things, we were spending money, let's grow and so on and so forth. And I think sometimes what you need to ensure, and a lot of the learnings people have been through, many people, this was their first time they've been through sort of a real challenging sort of period, is actually how agile was our business? How quickly were we able to pivot what we're doing? And one of the big challenges I think we've seen at North Star is a lot of people coming into the industry in the last 3-4 years haven't been your classic 360 consultants. Can't hunt and farm. There are a lot of organizations, a lot of delivery people, loads of jobs to fill. We don't need, we've got jobs coming out of our backsides. All of a sudden taps get switched off. Christ, we've got really great people here at filling jobs, but where are the opportunities? Have we got the right people? And I see organizations investing in those people, trying to find the people that are great at delivery, but maybe can start doing some of that hunting as well as that farming. One of the key things is, and again, businesses in downturns and downtimes, we're burning cash quite often, and a lot of organizations, I think, lost sight of the importance of having a decent reserve, a war chest to fight through the difficult, challenging times, and then it starts to fall into panic mode. Because if you need to shrink a business back, for various reasons that are forced on you, external
Yeah.
factors. You
Yeah.
want to do it in a methodical, calm manner. What you don't need to do is think, shit, I've got this corporation tax bill there, I've got that bill over there, I've got half my consultants aren't they're actually costing me money, they're not making me money, and you
Yeah.
go into this panic mode, and then that isn't great, is it, for sort of leaders? So I think, you know, one of the key things for me is making sure that, you know, we've got the right people doing the right things in the right way, that we're not putting too many eggs in too few baskets. And certainly from a client perspective, and you know, again, I'm only anecdotally sort of saying this, I can't quote specific agencies and clients and things like that, but
Yeah.
I think, dare I say, we sort of maybe weren't in control of the relationships as well as we might be. We weren't managing those client relationships as tightly as we could be.
Yes.
We're a bit reliant because, we just get, they're so good, it's great, we get all these jobs, we have all this stuff to do. But all of a sudden, in a constricting market, there's lots of opportunity out there, but the trouble is you've got 4 times as many people fighting after 80% of the roles that were there previously, you know. So yeah, you know, all of a sudden this whole thing about customer relationship and client management has really come into the fore, and actually starting to properly get, know and understand customers has been critical. And the final piece, which is massive, and I think everybody that had a business relying heavily on contingent, particularly contingent permanent business, is how quickly taps can be turned off. And I think I've seen this is the 3rd iteration of my journey now in recruitment life. But this whole sort of, why didn't we talked about doing RPO, we talked about doing managed services, we talked about doing statement of works, 6-12, but we were too busy. Oh shit, I wish we had. And I've heard that twice before. When the market, when the bottom drops out of the market, everybody turns around and says, why didn't we do this 12 months ago? That would have made us more resilient. And I think, you know, it's like, it's again, the horse is bolted, but now's a great time to start thinking about that next 12, 24, 36 months. And actually, let's not build back on just contingent labor, be that perm or non-perm, but let's think about broader services and solutions. Let's think about becoming a talent partner, not just a recruitment supplier. And I think that's the really big learning out the last 12 months is.
I think you're right. And also as well, it makes sense when you think of it in all walks of life, you know, a balanced diet, a balanced exercise regime. Well, why not a balanced business? And we have the resources at our hands, certainly here, certainly in this community, and I'd say in the industry at large. I don't know. There'll be many people who go, do you know what? I didn't know you could have a contract business as well as a permanent business. I think people know those things. It's not news to them. But you're absolutely right. If it was me with an agency this time around, I would go and look at the balances of what you can have, not the balance sheet, the balances of a business. And I'd go, have we got a contract business? Have we got a permanent business that's robust? Are there many clients in those areas, not just a few clients in eggs in one basket, as you mentioned? I'd look at international expansion. It's something that's so scary and so fearful. Would you do the same with any other market? You know, back in the 90s, tech was big, and then it was databases, and then it was data warehousing. Well, it doesn't mean we didn't choose those because they were difficult. We chose them because they were hard. That allowed us a bigger niche to go down. And I think if I was doing it now, in a tighter market, I'd use the headspace, if you like, to then put that balance in place where you can go, right, we are going to now develop a contract business or an international presence or have an RPO or retained business or not just work on contingent. And I would put all those little chess pieces in place, and then I'd work them over the next 3, because rest assured, you'll be a really nice boom in the next 18 months, 2 years. And if you're in fit for purpose, as we used to call it, if you're fit for purpose at those times, you will thrive in those times. And then when it comes to the downturn again, because inevitably it'll come back, there'll be another downturn in this trade cycle, then at least then you can say, well, this bit's supporting the business, or this bit's still doing well, or who knew that the Middle East GCC companies is doing well now? And there's always you can do it. So I think you're right. Not eggs in one basket. Certainly have a balanced business and going that way. And look, and it's getting, you know, it is starting to grow. We've had last year in the Power Hive alone, we had a couple of companies who said, we've had an amazing year, we stayed still, because so many others were falling apart. People were losing, people were closing businesses, not so much in the Hive, thankfully, but they've been in the industry at large. And I think the fact that we've now seen people say it's picked up, so much so, I've heard some people say that they've had the best quarter, which is surprising, but that's great. What can you now suggest then, as we are starting to open up and grow again, because we're quite versatile, aren't we, recruiters? We do look for where we make money. What would you suggest would be a good way to go about looking at that growth, and what's the right time to start looking at that?
Look, I mean, reflective practice we do a lot of, and I certainly do a lot of within that leadership coaching and business mentoring, because it's about being reflective. You know, when we North Star, we go in and we work with our clients, you know, one of the first things we do is get into that reflective piece. And it's like, right, okay, where have we come from? You know, why are we here? Why did we start this? So where did we come from? Where are we now? What have we learned along the way? But the important thing is about where do we want to go to, and why, you know, and getting that real clarity of purpose, of understanding. You know, one of the things that we were talking about, that really great recent event down at Bradner's in the city centre, about building a business, but with that real laser focus on building value, enterprise value. And that links back to what you were just saying, Keith, is, you know, actually, you know, you can have a business that's doing, I don't know, you know, 5 million GP that might be actually worth £1 million if you're lucky. You could have another business doing 5 million GP that potentially could be worth 2.5, 3 million quid if you get the right balance and the right mix. And so the work we do with clients very early on is to say, right, what are you looking towards? And it's not about actually saying this is the exact date of exit, or this is what the event's going to be, but let's think about enterprise value. Let's think about what you want to get out of this on the journey, because the work is very, very hard. The effort is intense. You deserve the rewards, not all backloaded, because there's a massive danger in that. It can all crumble at the wrong time and you lose everything. But what do you need to grow your business and get the rewards as you go through that journey? But yeah, let's build it on enterprise value going forward. But what we do is do that reflective practice. So, right, where are we now? What do we look like right now in terms of enterprise value? What's that business mix, product, services, market, so on and so forth? What have we got in terms of infrastructure right now? And then the important thing is right, where does the opportunity lie? You know, one of the tools we use is called a SOAR analysis, and it looks at you know, the key critical thing. It's about, what do we want the results to be? What does success look like? What are our objectives going forward? It's a step beyond that rather old tired. Yeah, exactly. It's a step away from that SWOT analysis thing. So yes, we look at your strengths and building on those strengths, but it's more an opportunities, but it's more about the results and the objectives. That's the key critical thing. And then building that plan out. And like you rightfully said, look, this isn't roulette. You know, we're not going to put one chip on every single number. But what we can't do is put all our chips on just one number, because unless you're bloody lucky, you lose really quick. And I know that from experience. I'm rubbish when it comes to gambling. As soon as money's involved, I lose everything. Yeah, you know, the important thing is you'll need to make a few small bets, take a few small gambles, but it's doing educated ones. And when something works, right, that's where we double down. And maybe we do something there and it hasn't quite worked. That's cool. We can just turn that off, and we accept that there's a small loss in the short term, but we tried and it wasn't for us. You know, and that's the important thing, is it's doing the things we're setting out to do, do them, reflect, and if it's right to double down and push on, great. Sometimes it's right to say, do you know what? Cut our losses, move on, you know, and not chase the loss. You know, which we see a lot in businesses as well. You know, so for me, it's like, do you really want to just go on for another 3 years doing more of the same, go through the same cycle, the peak and then the trough, the peak and then the trough? Hopefully you get it right and you exit when it's somewhere towards a peak. Chances are you won't. Or do you want to be smarter about that? Do you want to build something that will have resilience through those downturns, where you can, you know, you might shrink back a little, but you'll be in an amazing position. You'll still be making money and profitable. Yeah,
in a body lean sense.
Absolutely.
One of my good friends, he's the CMO of a very large agency, global agency, and he said sometimes that the more difficult decision is, once you've taken that bet, of actually having a time frame around he calls it the romantic calendar. And at some point, you're going to have to say, look, this just isn't working, and having the strength to pull back as well. And one of the phrases that you work with, what, 25 or so organizations now in the industry,
Pretty, as a business North Star, we all
North Star, and I think that, the world has started to use the words press the reset button. I know that you use that as an ideology. My understanding of that, when I talk about that to companies, is not reset, go back to start, sack everyone, start again. I don't mean that when I say reset. I use it in the sense of take stock. If you were starting a business in the position that you're in now, and this was the start, just think how strong that start is. That would be my reset button perspective. But what's yours? How, when you use that terminology, what do you normally do with that?
Yeah, look, it's really good, and I'm going to again link it. Sorry, I keep linking it back to sport here, don't I? But
Good, you
look, there are clubs, entities within sport that have been phenomenal. I'm passionate about my sports, but my big heroes in sport, Ron Dennis, when he got hold of McLaren, turned it into this amazing powerhouse. His vision was to knock Ferrari off their perch, and he did it. You look at Ferguson, and what he did with United to knock Liverpool off their perch, and he did it. And I'll talk about, because United are having to push the reset button right now under Radcliffe, because it's a frigging shambles, excuse my language, and it's embarrassing. You look at what Woodward did. You look at Brailsford. There's a nice little link there back into United, isn't there? You look at Brailsford, what he did with cycling. We won, well, pre-Sky. Cycling at the Olympics, we won 1 medal in 72 years. And then over 12 years, I think it was something like 25 medals, most of them gold. Why? Because they realized they couldn't doing it the same way anymore. They had to change. And like you've rightfully said, Keith, and identified, it's a case of saying, right, what have we got? Let's just pause. Let's work on the business, not in it, for a little bit of time, because that's one of the big failings. A lot of recruitment leaders don't do. They don't make time to spend working on the business. They're too in it. They're too close to it. You've got to step back, got to see the wood for the trees. But let's look at what we're good at. Let's look at what we do well. Let's be critical about ourselves and appreciate what we don't do so well, what we could do better. What are the opportunities that we're not exploring, that we need to explore? There's a few little bets to be placed, few gambles to be made. And that's the thing. But one of the important things, and why I mentioned, Ron Dennis, why I mentioned Clive Woodward, why I've talked about Dave Brailsford, is those three in particular. It's all about marginal gains. It's all about driving efficiencies and effectiveness, and it's not about cracking the whip and getting the driver of the car or the player on the pitch or the cyclist on the bike and beating them up when they're doing their job. It's about saying, how do we best support those people? How do we get the best out of our organization? They look at every aspect of that organization, how it operates, what its modus operandi is, and they make every area as good as it needs to be. Not 100%, but they understand where it needs to improve, and they look at lots of little improvements in lots of little spaces. The sum total of that, classic, the aggregation of marginal gains, over time is absolutely vast. And I'm praying to the football gods that Jim and Dave come in and save my football club, because I tell you what, United are a basket case at the moment on the pitch, and we need to sort it out.
Who is the female cyclist, the Britain's greatest gold medalist who just retired?
Laura Kenny.
Laura Kelly, right. She was telling a story of Dales Brailsford when she was asked about marginal gains. And she went, you don't understand how fine-tuned he is. And she tells a story of where it sounds like she's being pompous, but people that know her know she isn't this woman. But she was telling a story of her mattress just wasn't comfortable. And he changed the mattress for her, and they took the mattress on every location that they went with her, so she had a better night's sleep. Just that alone was one factor in 1,000 factors in her case, which made her the greatest gold medalist we've ever had.
I tell you what, Keith, that's a really good point you've made there. And why? Because when you look at cycling, it's exactly what they did, and Sky did that as well. Sky were the first team to take their own chefs and their own food with them. Sky were the first team to take their own beds with
Right.
them, so on and so forth. Sky were the first team that at the end of a grueling 120-mile climb up 3 mountains in the Pyrenees, they popped them all on their turbo trainers outside of the big bus after the race,
Yeah.
and they're all warming down. They're being conditioned properly. Now, interestingly, Sky knocked it out. They knocked it out the park for years. They destroyed everybody else in their path. What happened with Sky, unfortunately, is everybody else saw what they were doing, copied what they were doing, caught up with them, and some teams overtook them. And it's happened in cycling as well, hasn't it? You know, with Visma and Sky, and you look at, you know, internationally, Team GB ain't what they used to be. You know, other teams have come through, because you've got to keep pushing yourself to improve, to be the best you can be. Because if you rest on your laurels, as Sky did, as Man United did, failure will happen, and it will come quickly. You know,
we did it. I mean, just bring it back around to the recruitment world. We did it. Not many people would maybe know this brand, but we were Progressive out of the S3 brand. But there was 14 brands in the what became S3 in the end. And there was one point where Progressive were the fastest. We were third fastest growing company in the UK in the Virgin Fast Track, which is amazing. And the year after, we were the fastest growing company in the Virgin Fast Track. And the year after, we were the fifth fastest. But eventually, Huxley Associates overtook us, because what we got good at was just focusing on the one thing. So to bring it back to this scenario in terms of strategy and purpose, what we forgot to do was to analyze why we were doing well, not just consistently analyzing why we're doing bad. So we'd always go, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that better. But what we hadn't realized sometimes is to reflect on the why we're doing so well and stick to the good things that we're doing. We just come for granted, as you say. And I think that's key to the whole business world as well, Miles, in that sense. It brings it around quite nicely, I think. You know, everyone is starting to grow, and if anyone's out there still panicking, then it's been a tough market. But you know, like we've said before, this too shall pass, and there'll be a very buoyant market around the corner, if not already starting to happen. What would you advise just on that? Because a lot of people struggle with peaks and troughs. It's the classical recruitment nightmare, isn't it? You know, you have a great month, and then you have a terrible month, and when you have a great month and someone gets the highest commission check, they tend to leave. It's just an absolute nightmare that we go through. How do you guard against that, or how do you advise people can guard against that, to choose that they're not doing the same as everybody else is at times like that?
Yeah, look, you talk there about, you know, it's not just about, it's Pareto law, isn't it? So, you know, let's not spend too much time focusing on all the bad performers and all the bad things. Let's think about turning a strength into a super strength. Now, you know, we talked earlier about smart objectives and some of the work that we do and we're really passionate about. And within, you know, the Power Hive recruitment business health check, when people do that, it asks for certain information and data. Why? Because understanding where you are, what that looks like compared to average, compared to best in class, sometimes give you some real focus in terms of actually, we're not sweating our asset as well as we might here, you know. And interestingly, you know, I'm working with a couple of clients at the moment, not anywhere near the scale of S3, by the way, but where they have multiple divisions rather than multiple businesses. But interestingly, with one, we've been really good over the last few years to develop a dashboard so they can see not just the results, as in, oh, they're doing really well from a pounds, shillings, and pence point of view at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year. But actually, what does their organizational performance look like? What are their ratios? What are their key performance indicators? And what we're now doing with that business is saying, okay, we've got some really great stuff happening in that division, but we need to try and suck that best practice out and cross-purpose that for this division here that's really not got that level of performance. But unless you've got that data, unless you're looking at a dashboard, a scorecard, metrics, so getting the right metrics in place for your strategy, for me, is recruitment leadership 101, because it's not about, you know, looking at the board, stop looking at the bloody financial results. Look at the causes, not the effects. Get ahead of the curve. Start looking at what are we doing? What's the output of that? And how does that affect the result? And it's affecting change in this area, having the data in that area that's critical for me. So, You know, I know
Yeah.
Paul and I, interestingly, we've been doing some work with one of the Power Hive members recently on metrics and dashboards. And yeah, I haven't come across one organization yet in my 20 years of doing this that has nailed it down 100%. You know, quite often we're measuring too much on results and activity, but we're not looking at the detail and the granularity. And in many instances, actually, we've found a lot of the integrity in the data is quite poor.
Right.
And if you're making decisions based on data that the integrity is poor, you're better off just ignoring it all and just trust your gut. So what part of the work we do is making sure that, you know, we're getting the data right in the systems that consultants are using, the CRM, not because we want to check how many bloody calls they're doing and how many jobs they're raising, but to make sure that when we're using that data, we can trust that data and make sure it's right. So for me, that's the key critical thing. If you're going to drive your organization, you know, and a good dashboard and a good metrics are a great tool to implement strategy if you get those metrics right.
Absolutely, and you're right. Look, we have to take it for granted to a degree that the data is correct, but you're right, it generally isn't, and that's probably the first marker to actually aim at. But I think you're right, Miles. You mentioned it earlier about cause and effect. The data is just the effect, right? But that doesn't really tell us what's happening internally. But I think if you've got good cross-divisional or even just good cross-consultant metrics of where the best practice lays, then look behind the curtain and go, well, why is that best practice?
Yeah.
And I think you've then got to go into behaviors and actions and activity levels and all those other factors as well. But I think also it comes down to, you know, does that person turn up on time? Are they the last to leave? There'll be other factors in there that are not just, oh, look at that. Why
I'm smiling. There's just such an interesting coincidence. It's I think there's a great quote going back to sport. There's a great quote, and I think it was it Gary Player? Somebody was, and he was like, "Yeah, stranger. The more I practice, the luckier I get."
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
And do you know what? The person who comes through the door early, the person that isn't out having a cigarette every 20 minutes, the person that stays late on a Friday because they're going to get hold of those candidates that they've struggled to get hold of earlier in the week. It's amazing. They're the person that performs the highest.
Absolutely. Well, I had
surprise,
a very cliched, unfortunately, but I said the early bird catches the worm, and the person who stays to the end will see the encore. So, so you've got to be first in and last out. Well, then eventually you end up having a ridiculous hour working practice, which is not ideal. Time's pushing on us, Miles, and I'm conscious of everybody else as much as ourselves, and obviously thankful of your time always. What's one thing then? I always leave this. I'm glad that you brought this up off camera, but it's why I asked everybody. What would be the one thing you say, look, to do with strategy and purpose in a time where it's been tough, but it's starting to get better? What's the one thing that you would say to do, and why would you say that?
One thing I would say, beyond actually do that reflective piece, have that clarity, have that 3-year objective, have that 12-month plan. The most important thing, and you mentioned it earlier, Keith, is this isn't a document that gets put away and never seen again. You need to review this. You need to go through a process. If you're going to drive an organization to be excellent and achieve outstanding financial performance, you need to plan what you're going to do. You need to do it. You need to check it. You need to review it, make any tweaks, changes, so on and so forth, and go again. And it's a loop you go through. And organizations that not just we work with, you know, because it's not about North Star. This is about just great business practice. Organizations that achieve are organizations that have clarity of what their objectives are, what success looks like, and they go through this cycle of continuous improvement. Plan, do, check, act, measure the right things, move forward. But it's that process. If you're not reviewing and doing something about it, forget it. There's no point in having a strategy or a plan if you're not gonna go through that loop of plan, do, check, act. It's critical.
But if you don't mind me, I didn't want to have the last word, but you just reminded me of something. For us, it was alignment. It was really important that we understood alignment, and that word is not just that Miles now knows that Keith says we've got a 7-to-1 interview to placement ratio, for example. That's not just alignment. I'm talking about genuinely, does this person know what it takes to do this job? And are they aligned with what the values of our company are? And if they're not aligned with that from there, but that comes back to your reflection, review, and all those other avenues. The biggest challenge we had when we grew very large was alignment across locations, regions, divisions, and in the end across different brands. And it was only when we got that into place that we then added 1 or 2 points on our multiplier effect, which caused, you know, significant flotation. And I think people don't do that enough. Alignment would be that thing.
I agree. Share this. Look, strategy plans, they're not for business owners and leaders. Yes, those people might be critical in terms of shaping that, but involve other people, engage other people, some in that process, but make sure you're sharing that, you know, that communication piece, right? Yes. Guys, this is the mountain we're going to climb. This is the journey we're setting ourselves. This is what success looks like. These are all of our objectives. This is what we're working towards. And each quarter go back and right, this is where we're at. This is what we've done well. This is what we're not doing well. This is what we need from everybody. You know, so everybody's bought in. Don't get me wrong. You know, if you've got, you know, a long bloody rowing boat and you've got 10 people in it, you're not going to have all 10 rowing as hard as each other. But what you need to do is make sure that nobody's going in the opposite direction. Okay, you might have the odd person at the back with their oar lifted out, but at least they're not counterproductive. Yes, but we can only afford 1 or 2 not pulling their weight. Anybody going the opposite direction is a disaster. So you're right. That communication piece, that alignment, absolutely critical, and it has to be ongoing as well. So sorry, I've just jumped in and sort of had the last word. You can come back in and have the last word, and I'll shut up.
Finished. No, thank you very much, Miles. It's 4:01 local time. Thank you very much, Miles. I'll see you. Well, probably next week. I've no doubt on something else. But thank you very much for today, Miles, Lloyd, North Star people. See you next time, everybody.
See you then. Cheers.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.